Number 10. The Teen Tyrants. We're gonna start off with a variant of the team from another Earth. They're inspired by the Crime Syndicate, who are the evil version of the Justice League. So their team consists of Red Robin, Tempest, Arsenal, Red Raven, and Blackfire. What makes this slightly perplexing, especially to someone just jumping in, is except for one of these are all names that have been used either by the hero in question or someone in their universe. For example, Red Robin is often the alias of Tim Drake, but this Red Robin is an alternate evil Dick Grayson. Tempest is the name eventually taken on by Aqualad, just like Arsenal is for Roy Harper. And Blackfire in the main verse is Starfire's sister. They were clearer with their naming in the Crime Syndicate, where it was Ultraman, Superwoman, Owlman, etc. However, admittedly, a lot of the potential confusion is cleared up by the visuals, and the fact that the Titan team in question here is the one from the animated series, and not from the comics, so that helps. Number 9. Jessie Quick. Now for those of you who are watching the CW Flash show, you'll know of the existence of Jessie Quick, but what about her history with the Titans? Jessie Chambers first debuted in the Justice Society of America Volume 2 Number 1 back in 1992. She's the daughter of two Golden Age heroes, Johnny Quick and Liberty Bell. Through some waffling about where to put her, she ended up on the 90s run of the Teen Titans, which was simply entitled Titans. At this point, she was a member of the team but also managed her father's company, Quick Start. Part of why she was recruited to the Titans was that they felt their personal squabbles had taken the team down before, and they wanted buffers. A question people often have about Jessie and her speed is how fast is she in relation to Wally, cause it would vary. Also, she was involved with her mom's boyfriend and that led to his death, it was a whole thing. She accessed her speed powers using what she called a mantra. She could visualize the speed formula, so she had to do this in order to access the speed force, which she was linked to. Because of her mom, she also has super strength, so a good power combo. Number 8. Osiris. There have been 3 Osirises, and for our purposes we need the third, Amon Tomaz. He was briefly a member between Infinite Crisis and 1 year later. Big DC reset events, cause nothing shakes up the roster of a team like a giant event. So he is the brother of the hero Isis, who during this period would marry Black Adam, who was on a heroic bend briefly, kinda sorta. Osiris joined the Titans cause he wanted friends. You know, save the world, go out for burgers, it's like a club really, but sometimes members die, and he was one of them. He was granted his powers by Black Adam, and so to become Osiris he must say his name, which must have a double effect on people. They must panic and think Black Adam is about to show up to defend his brother-in-law. One question people have about his powers is whether or not he has access to all of Adam's powers when he is not there, or is it just still a small portion of them, which is the usual Shazam fare, but coming from Egyptian gods, so Shu, Heru, Amon, Zehutu, Aten, and Mehen. If I mispronounced any of those, I'm sorry, but I'm sure some of you will yell at me anyway. Number 7. Wonder Girl, Cassandra Sandsmark, the second Wonder Girl even though she's the third to be called that name. She first debuted in Wonder Woman Volume 2 Number 105 back in 1996. Unlike Donna Troy before her, she has a definitive and clear origin. She was Wonder Woman's sidekick and would go on to be a Teen Titan, have a thing with Superboy, at the time Con-El or Connor Kent, and then end up with Robin, Tim Drake, his best friend when they thought he was dead. So she gets her powers from mystic artifacts, such as the Gauntlet of Artemis, the Sandals of Hermes, which give her strength and flight. Also, fun fact, Zeus blessed Cassandra's mother to be able to take away her powers temporarily with a touch. Zeus believes in a good time out. This isn't random, she's Zeus's daughter. He's still taking up with the Earth ladies all these millennia later. Cassandra also has a lasso, but it's not a lasso of truth. She can also have her powers impacted by other members of the Greek pantheon, like Ares, who once took her powers because he felt she was being too frivolous. You have to be into Wonder Woman to get all the nuances of Cassandra, and since Rebirth she really hasn't been as prominent. She is now on the Titans of Tomorrow, because there were multiple Titans books running simultaneously. So now she's not in the present timeline, but it's fine. I mean, Connor only kinda sorta exists right now anyway. There's so much confusion with who is who and where they are. Number 6. Wally West 2. So Wally West 1, I guess, is the second Flash in the mainverse timeline, but the third if you include all continuity. He took over the mantle of the Flash after Barry Allen died in Crisis on Infinite Earths in 1985. So then Wally went from being Kid Flash to Adult Flash. He was the Flash all the way up until the New 52, which was used as an opportunity to retcon him out of existence, because DC head Dan Didio doesn't like him. And yet, there was still a Wally West. Meet Wallace West. He debuted in The Flash Annual number 3 back in 2014. He is introduced at first as the biracial, even though they rarely draw him that way at first, son of Iris's brother. Wally would end up joining the New 52 version of the Titans as Kid Flash, but fans never really took to him as they were salty and bitter about how Wally 1 was retconned. So they brought Wally 1 back in Rebirth. they're gonna call the second one WALLY 2, I'm calling the first one WALLY 1. WALLY was brought back in Rebirth. It was a big event. Very moving. But now, what about WALLY 2? It's not his fault he was poorly introduced and handled. Also, if he was retconned out of existence, there would be a thing on a whole other level. So he has been kept around as well, and in Rebirth has a new origin. He is now the son of Iris' other brother, Daniel West, who is the Reverse Flash, which is a cooler origin. WALLY 2 is cool, he just needed to be introduced in a way that wasn't full on trying to replace the first WALLY. Why did anyone think people would go with that? Who greenlit this? Number 5. Ravager. Okay, so there have been 5 DC characters named Ravager, but we're talking about Rose Wilson, Deathstroke's daughter. She first appeared in Deathstroke number 15 back in 1992. Ravager, pre-rebooted Origins, had a complicated relationship with her father to the point where she both idolized and hated him, and was modified with the same serum that enhanced him. However, the serum rendered her unstable, and she was prone to fits of psychotic rage. She even gouged her own eye out to be more like her father. She ends up on the Titans after befriending Nightwing, who Deathstroke had asked to train Rose after she had lost to Batgirl Cassandra Cain. This was after Dick's rape, so he was in a bad place and open to going to the dark side for a little bit. Rose would mellow out considerably post-Crisis. She would get her eye back and would sometimes babysit Leanne for Roy Harper, back when Roy Harper's daughter was still alive and existed. She's also been a member of Terror Titans, and since Rebirth she is around again, but not as prominent, and Nightwing trained her, but not because Slade asked him to, but because he wanted to. Number 4. Jericho. Now Jericho is set to appear in the, at the time of this recording, upcoming season 2 of Titans. Jericho is another of Deathstroke's children. He first appeared in Tales of the Teen Titans number 43 back in 1984. He was created so the team wouldn't consist entirely of characters with connections to pre-existing heroes. He is Slade's youngest son. He was rendered mute when Slade's mercenary life caught up with him and they came to try and kill him and his family. He saved his son, but not before his vocal cords were cut. So Jericho could possess someone by making eye contact. His body turns insubstantial and then he enters the host. He can then tap into all that person's abilities. However, the victim can still speak. He can't take over that part unless they're asleep. Jericho was a pacifist and genuinely good person until he got corrupted. Now Jericho isn't hard to understand, but he was largely forgotten for a time, which was a shame. His storylines were really good. Yay for him being acknowledged again. Number 3. Power Boy. Once again a hero that has shared their name with multiple others. We're talking about the third Power Boy. And yes, there is a Power Boy, and yes, he has a boob window. The third Power Boy debuted in Teen Titans Volume 3 number 38 back in 2006, and was on the team during the 1-year gap in Infinite Crisis. He had vague Supermanish powers. So Power Boy was supposed to be a male parody of female superhero cliches, down to his costume that had the boob window and had a lot of chest hair in it. I don't know, for me it never fully crystallized. I mean, a lot of heroes have ridiculous costumes, and as a fan of the boob window, that never really connected with me. He dated Supergirl for a bit and then got creepy and possessive, and she had to assault him to get him to leave her alone. Again, parody? If so, it's just poorly executed. Can somebody else have this costume? I'm kinda into it. Number 2. Kid Devil, aka Red Devil. Meet Eddie Bloomberg. He first appeared in Fury of Firestorm number 24 back in 1984. Since Infinite Crisis, he was trying to join the Teen Titans and would eventually get in after failing for psychological problems. So Kid Devil, he used to get his powers from his devil costume, and some of the things were fun, like bursting bubbles, night vision, etc. But then Infinite Crisis happened and he was retconned. Now he had a demonic appearance and abilities to match, these given to him by the demon lord Neuron. He can breathe fire, has super strength and stamina, can heal almost any wound, his blood is now gasoline, his very breath can burn, he can create portals of fire and travel through them. He's not around right now. He died sacrificing himself to save the Titans. See, he was a good addition to the team after all, as cannon fodder. Too soon? Kid Devil is a bit of a blink and you'll miss him character for a lot of people. He's not the Blue Devil, that's a different character. And number 1. Donna Troy. She made her first appearance in The Brave and the Bold number 60 in 1965, but the character of Wonder Girl had been around since 1961. This character had been created as a direct result of Frederick Wortham's novel Seduction of the Innocent, which posited all kinds of at the time salacious things about these heroes, and the Comics Code Authority wanted to combat this, especially because they were saying that children shouldn't read comics at all, and that was their market. Aside from Batman and Robin being coded as a homosexual couple, Wortham was afraid that Wonder Woman was a lesbian. He was really concerned about this, because she was a strong independent woman who didn't need no man. So the solution to this was to give Wonder Woman a family, including a Wonder Girl, because lesbians don't have families, I guess. And Wonder Girl was her little sister, but it was really just a younger version of herself who she partnered up with. However, this led to confusion, as when the Teen Titans started, she was mistaken for a regular character and not another version of Wonder Woman. They thought she was a sidekick. So she became an independent character by accident, and because of this her origin would forever be a convoluted mess, because at the start start, she didn't have one. There was even an entire plot years later surrounding this called Who is Donna Troy? On her origin, Marv Wolfman had this to say: I wrote the original Donna Troy origin story back in the first Titans run. She had never had one and was in fact not a real character. She was a computer simulation of Wonder Woman as a girl. That story also named her Donna Troy and set up everything that followed. Unfortunately, after Crisis on Infinite Earths and the Wonder Woman revamp, we had to go back and redo it again, as a brand new Wonder Woman being born on Earth could not have rescued the girl from the burning building. I wish we had been able to keep it, as I think it's gone insane now. I just wanted a simple origin story. I came up with the original, and then George Perez and I simply elaborated on what had been done, giving her real knowledge of who she was. I would love to say that everything after Who is Donna Troy should be forgotten, but that's not the way continuity works, sadly. I feel like that belongs on a t-shirt. That's not the way continuity works, just a sad crying face. She also had multiple power sets and different origins for said power sets. First, she was given powers by the Amazon's Purple Ray. Post-Crisis, she had powers that were identical to Diana's, but they were later enhanced, and she could command darkness and cold. In Rebirth, when Dick became Rick, Donna took over leading the Titans. That's the Cliff Notes version. Donna could have a whole video all her own. At one point, she was a magical duplicate made up of the memories of her from Wally West. That's Wally West 1.
In at number 10, Raven. Raven is a very powerful member of the Teen Titans crew, and her background of being half demon means that she has a number of different supernatural abilities ranging from spellcasting to telekinesis. In the Teen Titans animated show, the majority of her abilities are focused on her manipulation of darkness, but for the comic books, she's able to manipulate so much more. Raven possesses a power to change the emotions of others, which comes in handy when wanting to calm down a few supervillain rampages. However, her powers become significantly restricted in terms of controlling her own emotions. In at number 9, Beast Boy. Another key member of the Teen Titans team who has appeared in a variety of iterations is Beast Boy, aka Garfield Logan. After coming into contact with a rare disease, his parents attempted to save him by using an untested machine, which turned his skin green, but not all things are bad. It did grant him with some remarkable abilities. He's able to transform into any animal and sometimes anything he chooses. One time, a lamp. Not the best, but nonetheless, let's continue. While he maintains his human intelligence when transforming into an animal, his powers become restricted due to his inability to communicate once in that form. Plus, whenever Gar is sick, he has a very tough time trying to control his abilities. Even a simple cough or sneeze could randomly transform him into something that he didn't want to transform into. In at number 8, Jessie Quick. As a speedster from the Flash family, Jessie is connected to the Speed Force, making her a Speed Force conduit. This allows her a number of remarkable powers such as accelerated healing to having enhanced senses, allowing her to react faster in times of trouble. Although all of these enhanced abilities do have their limitations. While having an incredible level of stamina, Jessie's hypermetabolism is her one drawback. Due to her Speed Force, Jessie must consume large amounts of nutrients in order to restore her strength after maxing out all of her speed abilities. Taking breaks for snacks may not be a huge power restriction, but it is one nonetheless. In at number 7, Dick Grayson. One of the more important and prominent members of the Teen Titans is Dick Grayson. Not only is he one of the most respected figures in the superhero community with his ties to Batman, but Grayson has also proven on more than one occasion that he's perfectly capable of standing on his own. Due to Grayson not being blessed with supernatural powers, many of his greatest strengths come by way of human-related skills that he's just been able to master. Things such as acrobatics learned from his time with the Flying Graysons and hand-to-hand combat mastered through his partnership with Batman are all human abilities that can be taught and enhanced through practice. This means that for a majority of his powers, we'll call them that, the restrictions would come by way of his own emotions. When he is under immense pressure, he has a bad habit of lashing out, which means his leadership and other powers are not under his direct control. In at number 6, Hawk. Also known as Hank Hall, he is one half of the crime-fighting duo known as Hawk and Dove, which have been main members for both the Teen Titans as well as the Titans. Of the pair, Hawk is by far the muscle of the duo with his enhanced strength, endurance, and agility. Due to his height and density, Hank is, for the most part, invulnerable to a lot of damage. However, Hawk has a few major power restrictions that do limit his extraordinary abilities. For starters, his own powers will not allow him to change back into his human form until any and all injuries he has sustained are fully healed. Another drawback is that when Dove is not by his side, Hawk finds himself spiraling into rage-fueled battles and becomes very prone to reaching an uncontrollably berserk state. In at number 5, Ravager, aka Rose Wilson. She is the daughter of Slade Wilson, also known as Deathstroke. Due to her being the daughter of such a dangerous person, Rose too was given the same serum as her father, thus enhancing her abilities to that of near superhuman levels. As Ravager, she was trained by Nightwing to learn how to not just hold her own in a fight, but control these powers as well. One very valuable power that Rose possesses is precognition, which allows her to predict an opponent's move before they've even had a chance to deliver it. In a fight, that's an invaluable asset to have, although this power of precognition does have its limitations. Rose can only access this ability when her adrenaline is triggered. In at number 4, Speedy. Speedy was once the alias that Roy Harper took on while working as Green Arrow's sidekick, but upon joining the Titans he eventually became known as Arsenal. In any case, no matter what his name is, Roy displays that he is one fine marksman, in fact one of the best in the world. On top of that, he's an expert in martial arts and can turn any object into a weapon. The name Speedy came by way of his ability to fire off arrows faster than even Green Arrow himself. His status as just Speedy the sidekick though may be one of his greatest power restrictions. If you're thought of less than your superhero partner, then realizing your own greatness becomes trapped inside the idea that you're not good enough or not as good as your superhero. For Roy, this was a big factor along with the addiction problems with alcohol and heroin that stem from him being human. I mean, what are you gonna do? In at number 3, Malcolm Duncan. Also known by his Teen Titans alias of Harold, Malcolm was once a powerless citizen made into an honorary member of the team when he saved them from a gang. At the time of joining the Teen Titans, Malcolm had no formal training or any real powers other than what he could accomplish in a boxing ring. However, now seeking to take full advantage of this opportunity, Malcolm utilized the enhanced exoskeleton of Guardian to improve his strength, speed, and overall durability. Getting to his weaknesses, although it has since been retconned, one of the main power restrictions for him was a curse from the Angel of Death, who granted Mal with a mystical horn that would kill him if he ever lost a fight. Seeing as though this weakness has been removed from his now alias of Vox, it's safe to say that again more power restrictions from Malcolm would come from his kind of human side. Malcolm suffers from post-traumatic stress disorder, which means that anything triggering the events that led to this mental health disorder could be considered a restriction to his powers. In at number 2, Dove. Although there have been 2 people that have donned the Dove outfit, for this point because we're focusing on Teen Titans, we'll be talking about Don Hall, the brother of Hank Hall that we mentioned earlier. As we said earlier, Hawk and Dove have this sort of symbiotic relationship, where together they are much stronger. This is also what creates the restrictions for their own powers though. Dove is there to calm Hawk down so that he can focus during battle, but that doesn't necessarily mean that Dove is equipped for battle himself. Sure, he can soar through the air, sense impending danger, and is well equipped for hand-to-hand combat, but it doesn't go further than that. Without Hawk by his side, Dove is like a sitting duck. Last but not least in our number 1 spot, Jericho. Deathstroke was a busy man creating another Teen Titan with power restrictions for our list. Joseph Wilson is the youngest son of Slade Wilson, which is where he gained the metahuman gene that led to his powers. For those of you who don't know, Jericho was rendered mute when his father failed to save him from an assassination. Jericho then went on to be saved by his mother, where she trained him in combat and stealth tactics. His metahuman abilities though allow for Jericho to possess people, which, as you can imagine, would be a great power for battle. Although, this is where the restrictions follow. If the person he is wishing to take over is awake, he must make direct eye contact to take them over, and even so, he still remains a mute. Ugh.
Starting off our list with one of the OG members of the Teen Titans, in at 10, why Donna Troy was created. When the Teen Titans first debuted in the comics, it was in the Brave and the Bold issue 54 in 1964. The team was comprised of DC's sidekick characters, Robin, Kid Flash, Wally West, and Aqualad. But by the time issue 60 rolled around, they had adopted Teen Titans as their group name, and Donna Troy had joined the group as Wonder Girl. But unlike her teammates, Donna's reason for existing in the comics wasn't just to connect to younger demographics to improve comic book sales. She was the byproduct of the comics industry undergoing some drastic changes thanks to psychiatrist Frederick Wortham and his book Seduction of the Innocent, which attempted to correlate comic books with bad behavior in kids. He claimed a lot of outlandish things, including that Wonder Woman was a lesbian because she was depicted as a strong, independent woman. Right. In the aftermath of the Senate hearing that Wortham's book was catalyst to, DC had to change her character to make her more acceptable to parents, which included creating a Wonder family in which Diana would appear with her younger versions of herself and her mother. The teen version of herself was dubbed Wonder Girl. She eventually became her own character, Donna Troy, and Wonder Woman's sister. So all in all, Donna was created to make Wonder Woman look less queer. Fun. And at number 9, Donna Troy was recreated. So Donna Troy has had a bit of a confusing history, as you can probably gauge from our last number. Now after a whole story arc where she got married, had a kid who was prophesized to grow up into an evil dictator, who she then gave up her powers for in order to keep him and herself alive, she would eventually get her powers back, returning to the Titans under the name Troya. That happened after that husband turned into an ex-husband and her kid had died in a car crash. FYI. Bleak shit. Superheroes can't have love. By the time Wonder Woman issue 136 rolled around, Donna was wiped from reality's memory, and the newly reincarnated Diana would use her lasso to bind Donna and Wally West together, using Wally's memories of Donna to fill her soul and recreate her, rather than, going to another part of the multiverse and using one of those Donnas to do the same thing. So naturally this move would have greater implications later on Donna's psyche, with the character constantly questioning if this version of herself was really true to who she was, or was merely just Wally's interpretation of her. Basically, she lived in a perma-existential crisis for a while because of this. Come on, Wonder Woman, you should know better. And at number 8, Dick's bad hair. Moving from trauma to bad hairstyles. Dick Grayson is often considered to be one, if not the hottest character in comics, but dude has been victimized by some really bad hairstyles over the years. In 1992, he had a mullet. This occurred in New Titans issue 88 when Mirage, who was disguised as Starfire at the time, convinced Dick that he needed a new look, stating, I quote, "It's the 1990s out there, sweetheart, and it's time you finally joined up." That mullet eventually grew out and became a ponytail. But luckily for readers everywhere, that ponytail would get snipped off by a member of the False Face Society, which was a group working for Black Mask. This occurred during a fight in 1996's Nightwing issue 1, so clearly making a point of snipping it off was something that Chuck Dixon and Scott McDaniel really wanted to see happen on the run. For the record, Starfire's hair was real intense too for a while and gave her a couple of extra feet in height. And Beast Boy also had a mullet in the 90s too, around the same time, so just mullets galore. So many mullets. Up next at number 7, Speedy was a junkie. Speedy, aka Roy Harper Jr., was the first of Green Arrow's wards. He debuted in More Fun Comics issue 73 in 1941 as an orphan whose father was a forest ranger who would sacrifice his life to save that of a Navajo medicine chief. That chief, named Brave Bow, would raise Roy Jr., and eventually after he passed away, Green Arrow would ask Roy to become his ward. Roy would join up with the Teen Titans after Donna Troy did, who he actually began to date, but after the group disbanded for the first time, him and Donna broke up. Now around the same time, Green Arrow would lose his fortune and was neglectful of Speedy. So while his mentor was away on a cross-country adventure, Speedy would become addicted to heroin, which eventually led to the award-winning story Snowbirds Don't Fly, appearing in the Green Lantern Green Arrow crossover series. The two titular heroes were investigating junkies when, lo and behold, they discover that Speedy is a junkie. Green Arrow loses his shit and even beats Roy up over it. Speedy then quits being his ward, and then another junkie dies, there's a funeral, and then Speedy recovers on his own, returning to Oliver at that funeral at the end of the story to be like, hey man, I got over my addiction. Can I be your ward again? Bad timing, Speedy. There's a dead guy who's being buried in the ground who overdosed and his mom is crying there and you're like, take me back. Timing is everything. And at 6, Starfire's torture. Starfire's origins are pretty dark. So, her sister is Blackfire, a character who first appeared in New Teen Titans issue 22 in 1982. When she showed up, things got a little bit weird. So, Blackfire harbored a lot of hate for her sister, feeling denied of the throne of their home planet TERRA because of her sister, even though it was not Starfire's fault at all. The day Blackfire was born, the Citadel Empire had committed genocide on thousands of Tamaranians, so she was believed to be a curse due to association. Because of that, it would be deemed that she wouldn't get the throne and instead her younger sister Starfire would. Blackfire would find her own way to the throne though, selling out her home and working with the Citadel Empire. And of course, she tortured Starfire. She would sell Starfire into slavery, sold her for 1 year at a time, like slaves on lease, because apparently that is what they do out there. Her masters could do anything to her as long as she wasn't killed, and at the end of every year Blackfire would get her back and then torture her some more. The torture appeared to be a lot of physical labor, but it was implied that Starfire was sold into marriages with aliens and was likely raped. Eventually though, her sister sentenced her to be executed. But before that could happen, they ended up being enslaved by the Scions, an evil alien race of scientists, who performed deadly experiments on the two of them. Eventually Kori got away, but she freed her sister despite all of that crap that she had pulled. And what did Blackfire do? She still tried to get Kori executed. Kori escaped that too and fled to Earth, so when Blackfire found her on Earth and kidnapped her, some major went down. Not only did the two duke it out violently, but Blackfire pulled some really messed up crap to the rest of the Titans, and then shot them into space to die, all just to hurt her sister. Talk about sadistic. And at 5, Jericho. Jericho is a character who was introduced in Tales of the Teen Titans issue 43 in 1984. He was a character who was part of a movement by Marv Wolfman and George Perez in establishing the Titans as a team who was not just the, I quote, Justice Little League, as Perez put it. The son of Deathstroke, Slade Wilson, Jericho was a mute, but wasn't born that way. When he was a child, he was held hostage by a terrorist group called Jackal, who was sent by the Korak president as a means of retaliation against Deathstroke. Although he managed to rescue his son, they cut Jericho's throat, which rendered him mute. Things only got worse for him from there on out. After going to the Teen Titans, he would become possessed by the souls of Azarath, who were originally coming for Raven, but Jericho's psychic powers made it easier to go after him instead. His throat was repaired and he could speak again, but during the Titans Hunt storyline, the real Jericho resurfaced and begged his father to kill him. So that's what Daddy Dearest did. Luckily for Jericho, he would live on, with his soul apparently jumping into Deathstroke after Papa stabbed him right through the heart. In at 4, Dick Grayson was sexually assaulted. Remember how earlier on we mentioned that Dick got his haircut by Mirage pretending to be Starfire? Well, it gets much worse than just the mullet. Mirage is the character who first debuted in the New Titans issue 79 in 1991. She was a member of the Team Titans from the future, the ones who went back in time with the goal of killing Donna Troy before she could give birth to her son who would grow up to be an evil dictator. While that was going on, Mirage ended up changing her appearance to look like Starfire, and she seduced Dick Grayson, sleeping with him, with Dick believing that he was sleeping with Starfire, although sensing that something was off about her. Now, for a little bit of context, back in the future, Mirage was in a romantic relationship with the Nightwing of her timeline, although that Nightwing was not Dick Grayson, which we would learn later on. Back to the present. Mirage eventually reveals herself to Grayson, who freaks out about the whole thing. To add insult to injury, Panther then appears and starts calling Dick a slut, all as the realization that he's been sexually assaulted sinks in. Come on, Panther. She just like pops up and is like, Dick, you're a slut. I believe it's actually, Dick, you slut. In at number 3, Deathwing rapes Mirage. Things only get worse for Mirage's story, as you can probably guess from the title of our number. Remember that Nightwing from the future that we mentioned? So he would travel to the past and reunite with Mirage, but the evil version of Raven decided that she was going to use Nightwing's body as the host for the Trigon seed. She ends up going after this future version of Nightwing, who, just as a reminder, is not actually Dick Grayson. He's just another dude with a Nightwing persona, who, confusingly enough, looks just like Dick Grayson. This Nightwing would become corrupted and violent, which warrants him the new name of Deathwing. Deathwing goes to where Mirage is staying and then rapes her and impregnates her, and ultimately traumatizes the shit out of her. In at number 2, Deathstroke and TERRA. In 1984, there was a story arc in the New Teen Titans called the Judas Contract, in which a metahuman named TERRA joins the team, infiltrating them as a means of destroying them. Let's backtrack a sec though. TERRA joined the team thanks to her Earth manipulation powers. She formed a romantic connection with Beast Boy and gained the rest of the team's trust, except for Raven, who's like, I'm onto you, girl. Then it's revealed that TERRA is working with Deathstroke, that she smokes cigarettes, and her and the mercenary are implied to have a sexual relationship. She's also depicted as a total psychopath. George Perez would state that he and Marv Wolfman knew that she was going to be a traitor from the start and that she was going to be killed off. He literally stated of the character, I quote, I wanted her to be cute but not beautiful. She looked like a young girl. I gave her a substantial overbite, her eyes were wide, her body was slim, she wasn't particularly busty. I wanted her to look almost elven, so that when you see her for the first time wearing full makeup and dressed in a provocative outfit where you know she's just been in bed with Deathstroke, that it does jab you a bit. Whoa, good god, this little girl's a slut. He actually said that. By the end of it, she's overcome by her own hatred, Slade abandons her, and then she ends up killing herself. Man, I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's just too much. But of course, last but not least, we have our number 1, Raven crashed Dick and Kori's wedding, and it got really weird. Despite Dick getting assaulted by Mirage, he and Kori actually worked through it, and he proposed to her. They were set to be married in New Titans issue 100, but the wedding ceremony was interrupted by Raven, who at the time was evil, and some pretty insane shit went down. Literally right before the priest is about to announce them man and wife, he gets obliterated, burnt down to a skeleton, and Raven shows up wearing basically a handful of ribbons with Deathwing in tow. It gets even more absurd. She creates a force field around herself and Starfire, blocking out everyone else at the wedding. Dick is literally on the outside like banging on the force field the entire time. She tells Starfire that she isn't really Raven. She's just wearing Raven's skin basically, and she's the summation of all of the 100 children Raven's father Trigon had sired and killed. Starfire seems to miss that though, still addressing her as Raven, telling her that she's scared. Raven then says, I quote, "After all, my love, you love me as much as I love you. You love me." She then forces Starfire to admit it back, then she straddles her, opens up her mouth, implying that the glow emitting from it are the souls of all those dead Trigon kids, and then proceeds to make out with Starfire, declaring that she will be reborn. The whole thing is really intense and really terrifying. Starting us off in at number 10, Donna Troy's marriage. Donna Troy was the 4th member to join the Teen Titans back in the day, but it wasn't until Marv Wolfman came along that she had a lot of detail added to her character, including an origin story and a name of her own. But while Donna Troy was a special character to Wolfman, he also did some pretty weird stuff with her, specifically the marriage between her and a much older dude by the name of Terry Long. She was 19 and he was 29, which isn't as bad as another weird older dude younger lady relationship that we'll be touching on later on in this list. Now in the new Teen Titans in 1980, Donna got romantically involved with Terry, who was just a professor that often lurked around the Titans Tower. They got married in Tales of the Teen Titans issue 50 in 1985, but the marriage really didn't work out all that well. It was later revealed that some fan theories were correct. Initially, Wolfman had wanted Donna and Dick Grayson to be a couple instead, hence why he had spent so much time developing their friendship during his run. That being said, Wolfman also said this at one point, I quote, "Frankly, I would have left her married to her hubby because I still think Terry was the best match for her. But since he was killed off without my input, I did plan to later get the D-twins together." D-twins. Yeah, no thanks. Moving on. We got some more Donna Troy at this number. In at 9, Killing Donna Troy's Baby. That's a grim title. After that whole getting hitched debacle, Donna ended up getting pregnant and had a baby with Terry named Robert. While she was preggers, a group of Titans from the future would show up and try to kill her, all in the scheme to prevent her unborn child from becoming a character known as Lord Chaos, who tormented civilization in their time. Also worth noting that one of these future Titans, Mirage, sexually assaulted Dick Grayson. She made him believe with her powers that he was having sex with Starfire, his girlfriend at the time. Except really it was Mirage, and everyone would later laugh about it, which was actually super awkward and really unfortunate for Dick. Anywho, luckily Donna and her unborn baby didn't get dead. The Titans worked together with the future Titans to defeat Lord Chaos, and Donna would have her son's powers removed by the Titans of Myth to ensure that Robert wouldn't grow up to become evil. Terry eventually ended their marriage with a divorce and a restraining order against her. Worst part of all of this is that the 3-year-old Robert would inevitably die anyways, getting into a car crash with Terry which would take both of their lives. The two would later reappear to haunt Donna during the Blackest Night story arc and were basically zombies, and Robert would try to take a big ol' bite out of his mother in the process. Ugh. Speaking of mothers, in at number 8, Cole's mother. Let's talk about Cole Weathers' mother at this number. Cole, who was first introduced in June of 1985 in the New Teen Titans Volume 2 Issue 9, had the ability to morph her entire physical body into solid silicone and deflect energy-based attacks. For context, her father Abel was paranoid about the impending nuclear holocaust, and as a scientist worked at finding a way to let humanity survive if a fallout ever occurred. So how did he test out his experiments? Well, of course he used Cole as a test subject. And also his wife, her mother, too. While these experiments gave Cole her powers, it really messed up her mother in a very different way. He turned her into an insect, with his logic being that insects were better equipped at surviving a nuclear holocaust. Looking a little bit like a grasshopper, she approaches Cole in one of the most horrific encounters ever, like something out of a Kafka novel. And at number 7, DTK. Down to Kill, that is. Sorry, that was like super cringe, but Down to Kill is something that the latest iteration of the Teen Titans were very much on board to do. So, warning, this point has got some spoilers on some of the more recent issues of Titans, specifically issue 23, so skip ahead about 30 seconds if you want to miss this. So, this new Titans iteration has Dick Grayson leading the team once more, except his no killing policy seems to be tossed right out the window. So after the Dark Knight's Metal and No Justice storylines, meta energy had been leaking onto Earth and changing humans into metahumans, and the Justice League sanctioned this new Titans team to help deal with this occurrence, which they were calling the Emergent event. Now during this, we see everyone get a little bit unhinged. Donna slaughters a bunch of mutated rats. Raven's all like, whatever it takes to get the job done, you guys. And Miss Martian, the liaison of the team linking everyone together telepathically back at their HQ, considers murder something that sometimes happens when you need to get the right outcome. Nightwing, clearly, was like, guys, what the hell, and argues about how they shouldn't be killing anyone else, because that's what separates them from the bad guys. Apparently it's her heroic as far as they're concerned. And at number 6, Jericho's death. Jericho, aka Joseph Wilson, is one of Deathstroke's children, and to say that his history is a little rough is perhaps an understatement. While he's constantly fluctuated between being sane and insane over the years, early on during his first run with the Titans, he was killed by his own father in a really gruesome way. So for context, Jericho had joined the Teen Titans after the Judas contract storyline. He was possessed later on by the souls of Azarath, which was tainted by the essence of the demon Trigon, who is Raven's father. More on him in a minute. The souls slowly began to corrupt Jericho, and in the Titans Hunt storyline, Jericho managed to resurface through his possessed self and beg his father Deathstroke to kill him, which Deathstroke did, his logic being that he wanted to spare his son from any more suffering. Deathstroke stabbed him through the chest in a rather unsettling full-page panel. It would later be revealed that Jericho's soul managed to live on by entering his father, with Jericho eventually returning with a brand new look. New body, new look. And at number 5, the Terror of Trigon. Trigon is an evil, sadistic, cruel, and powerful interdimensional demon, and he's also Raven's dad. He decided to come to Earth to pop by and say hello to his daughter, and also wreak havoc, of course. A 5-issue story arc that was originally published in the 1984 The New Teen Titans Volume 2, it's revealed that Raven is destined to destroy the Earth by summoning her father, ultimately ruling at his side. The overall story arc was a really dark one for Raven. She returns to Earth in a transformed state, with red skin and 4 eyes just like Daddy Dearest. And then she turns New York into a hellish version of itself. Raven also gets killed by the Titans, with her soul self surviving, and then later destroys Trigon, then disappears altogether. Rough times for Raven. A lot of these Teen Titans have had pretty rough times actually when you think about it. And at number 4, Slade gets inappropriate. Speaking of Trigon, one of the Teen Titans' most sinister antagonists briefly worked for the demon. In the animated series, that is. In season 4 of the series, in an episode titled Birthmark, we see Slade get a little too up close and personal with Raven, a moment that many viewers who had seen it when they were really young have now recollected online these days about how disturbing they thought it was at the time, because, to be perfectly honest, it kinda looks like he's about to sexually assault her. And the episode Deathstroke comes back from the dead on Raven's birthday, and it's revealed that he's working for her father. He finds Raven in one scene and he rips off all of her clothes. Well, almost all of her clothes, revealing glowing symbols on her body that are birthmarks. While he doesn't go further than that, it's a really uncomfortable moment. Slade has had a bit of a history getting a bit inappropriate with female members of the Titans, as we will also see in our next number. And at 3, TERRA and the Judas contract. So as we said, it's not the only time that Deathstroke has pulled some kind of shady, nasty stuff. Now, one of the most scandalous parts of the Teen Titans history is Slade's very odd relationship with TERRA. Overall, the Judas contract is one of the most important stories in Teen Titans history, but it's also got a lot of really disturbing plot points. Long story short, a new member named TERRA joins the Teen Titans. Everyone adores her, minus Raven, who gets some bad vibes about the girl. Everyone ignores Raven, which turns out to be really dumb, because TERRA then betrays them, which particularly sucks for Beast Boy because he was hardcore falling in love with her. Anyway, we find out that TERRA has been working with Deathstroke this whole time. She also smokes cigarettes and says that her and Slade, who is significantly older than her by like a lot, are lovers. She's like 15, guys. He is much older than that. She's also really messed up, and notes that she just wants all of the Titans dead because the thought of them existing makes her sick. She's got a whole lot of anger problems, and because of that, when everything fails and the Titans become victorious, she ends up dying as a product of her own insanity. It's dark as hell. And at number 2, Starfire's past. Starfire has a really grim past. From the planet of Tamaran, Starfire was once next in line to become queen. Her older sister Blackfire, whom had developed many a bitter feeling towards her, was denied that opportunity since on the day of her birth, thousands of Tamaranians were murdered by the Citadel Empire, and the people saw her as a sign of bad luck. Blackfire would betray her people though, and formulated a scheme in which she went to the Citadel and Starfire was enslaved and abused for years, with Blackfire calling the shots. Talk about sadistic. One day the Scions showed up though and captured the two sisters, performing horrible experiments on them, which would result in their abilities with ultraviolet energy manipulation. Starfire managed to escape to Earth though, but years later Blackfire tracked her down, kidnapped her, and tried to resell her to the Citadel, and of course tortured her some more. This would result in an epic and quite brutal battle between the two, with Blackfire not afraid to resort to some pretty gruesome tactics in order to hurt her sister. Talk about a sibling rivalry. And finally, in at number 1, Raven the Wedding Crasher. In the New Titans issue 100, readers witnessed a very special event go sour. The issue featured the wedding of Nightwing and Starfire, although Dick and Kori's big day just didn't go as planned. Raven at the time had been going through quite the internal struggle to remain good, having the blood of her demon father Trigon running through her veins. Now at the wedding, Raven decides to show up possessed by Trigon. Not really a decision actually, just, I mean, when you're possessed, you kinda do what your possessor wants. Anyway, right before Dick and Kori are pronounced man and wife, she interrupts and immediately murders the priest upon arrival, disintegrating him. It's all very dramatic. Then she grabs Starfire herself, makes out with her for a little bit, and then lets her go, saying, "Out of all the people I've taken so far, you are the one who pleasured me the most. Now we are truly sisters." But don't feel all that bad for Dick and Kori. Their decision to get hitched was a pretty spontaneous one, and it was pretty obvious that leading up to it, Dick had gone cold feet. The two broke up later on down the line anyway, and besides, many a fan prefers to ship Grayson with Batgirl Barbara Gordon anyway.